So you've been in the business for 3+ decades.
I did more business in my first 30 days at the Boulos Company than I had done in 6 months.
So looking back over the years, what's the best deal you ever did? We'd like to welcome our listeners to the Boulos Beat podcast. I'm your host, Greg Boulos. The Boulos Company is Northern New England's largest commercial real estate services firm with offices in Portland, Maine and Portsmouth, New Hampshire. We've been selling and leasing real estate in Maine and New Hampshire since 1975. This is a series providing insight into Maine's real estate movers, shakers, and business leaders. And speaking of business leaders, I'd like to welcome Tony McDonald to the Boulos Beat. Tony is 62 years old, a consistent multi-million-dollar producing commercial real estate broker, and a longtime partner of mine at the Boulos Company, as well as a friend. He started with Boulos in 1987. Tony lives in Freeport with his wife, Denise Karen. They have a grown daughter, Kate McDonald, a golden retriever named Buddy, and Casco, a golden doodle. Tony has served on many boards, including the Gulf of Maine Research Institute, GMRI, the Children's Museum of Maine, the Coastal Humane Society, the Cumberland County Civic Center, where he was chairman. And for fun, Tony sails and skis. Tony is a 1980 graduate of the University of Maine at Orono, after which he continued his education with graduate school at MIT studying ocean engineering. He holds an MBA degree with an emphasis in finance from the University of Southern Maine. He holds the prestigious commercial real estate CCIM and SIOR designations. Welcome, Tony.
Thanks, it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. With undergraduate work in mechanical engineering and the study of ocean engineering at MIT, how did you happen to decide to work in commercial real estate?
Pure greed. At the time, my plan was to start an underwater engineering company. A lot of the work I'd done was based on underwater submersible type stuff. So I wanted to start a company to do that. I, as you alluded to, got an MBA and learned that you needed money to start a company. And I figured I needed about $250,000 to start that company, which was an enormous amount of money then. It's a lot of money now. It was an enormous amount of money then. And I needed to figure out how to earn that money because I didn't have it. I think I had $14,000. So at the time I was racing sailboats competitively, and I was noticing a lot of the guys that owned the fancy race boats that had making a lot of money were in the real estate business. So I thought, gee, being an engineer, I put those two dots together and thought maybe I should look at this. And I ended up meeting a fellow who ultimately became my mentor, who I raced sailboats with, and he was in the real estate business, and he got me in the business.
So Ed Haddad?
Ed Haddad. And the plan was to do this for 2 or 3 years. Back then, this was in 1986, this was happening. In Portland, Maine, things were red hot, as they've been a few times since then. And if you could show up, not drool on your tie, fill out a contract form, you could make some money relatively quickly. So my plan was to get in the business 2 or 3 years, earn a bunch of money, get out, go start this business. The recession hit, the one I still call the big recession, hit in 87, 88, somewhere in there. And that 2 to 3 year plan became a 5 to 6 year plan. And after 5 years, I was in the business and I liked it and just stuck with it.
But you didn't start with Boulos initially.
I did not. I met your brother Joe, the founder of our company, socially. We had some friends in common and asked him about getting in the business, and he wouldn't hire me because I didn't have any experience. He suggested I try residential real estate just to get my feet wet. So I went and I got a job at Century 21, and I had the gold coat.
Oh, sure.
And I did this while I was still an engineer, and my first listing was Stephen King's birthplace. That was the only thing it had going for it, was Stephen King's birthplace. It was a nightmare. And I hated residential real estate. It's a great business, and a lot of people have made a lot of money in it and continue to do so, but it just wasn't my thing. And I did it for a while, and I came back and I knocked on the Boulos Company's door again. Wouldn't hire me. said, why don't you go get some experience in commercial real estate? So I went to work for a company that no longer exists, the Portland Realty Group.
Is that Jeannie Sleeper?
Jeannie Sleeper Stone.
She used to be my French teacher.
Lee Anderson, yeah. And I still have the bronze plaque that was on the building at 19 Milk Street, was where their offices were. And that company didn't last, and I didn't last there. I spent 6 months there. And then the fellow that was managing the Boulos Company, then Jim Grawl, called me up and asked me to lunch and ended up bringing me on as a broker there. And I did more business in my first 30 days at the Boulos Company than I had done in 6 months with that smaller firm.
And that was what, 37 years ago? No, 33 years ago?
Something like that, yeah, 1987. Yeah, so whatever that is, yeah.
So Tony, so you've been in the business a while. What are some of your general philosophies of doing business as a broker?
It's hard work. It's, you've got to put time in. I don't think you need to be a mental giant to do what we do, Exhibit A and B. But you got to work hard. You've got to be tenacious. You can't be put off by failure. You've got to recognize that at any given point in time, 95% of the people out there have absolutely no interest in what we're selling. It's not because they're bad guys or we're bad salespeople. They just don't need it. You know, who needs an office building or a warehouse on any given day? So a lot of rejection, but you keep at it. And honesty and integrity are the other two big things that immediately come to mind.
So if I ask you what qualities make a good broker, it would be similar?
Yeah, I would say tenacity is going to help you get deals done. You just got to stick with it. You cannot take no for an answer. You just got to keep pushing the rock up the hill and make it happen. So you can do business that way. I think there's a difference between doing business and making a career. To make a career in the business and last like you have and I have and some of the other guys in our office and some of the other firms as well, you've got to have integrity. You've got to have honesty. You can't be afraid to tell people the truth even when it's not comfortable or inconvenient. Another thing Ed Haddad, my mentor, taught me years ago, sounds kind of trite, but when in doubt, tell the truth. When you're trying to explain how something happened, something went sideways in a deal, or why things didn't work out the way we'd hoped, or this or that, just tell them the truth. People have an enormous capacity for bad news, but very little capacity for surprises or BS. They don't like that. So I think honesty and integrity and hard work.
So when you got in the business 33, 34 years ago, how's business changed from when you got into the business to today? And I'm going to say that I think in '87 you started.
Right.
I'm not sure we even had cell phones back then.
We didn't. We
maybe
had
fax machines. I don't know.
We had a fax machine. Some of the cool guy brokers, and I wasn't one yet, had a phone in the car that was the size of a bread box, that was either Velcro to the transmission hump or was in a bag or something like that.
Bag phone.
Bag phone. It was enormous, and it cost like $800 a month. It was crazy. It didn't work very well. We didn't have the internet. The internet existed, but we didn't use it as consumers. It was just an entirely different world. And I remember when personal computers came in and the internet came along, we were panicking. We were thinking, oh my God, who needs us anymore? All this information is going to be available on the web. And we thought it was a real threat. And all it did was it accelerated our business because it took a big chunk of work, which was gathering information. It took it off our shoulders. So now it was all there with a few keystrokes and you could go do your job, which was to help sell or lease a property. I mean, back then, I tell the young guys in the office this stuff and they look at me like I'm Methuselah, and I guess I am. But if I had to go look at a property or learn about a property in Augusta, I had to drive to Augusta. I had to pick up some donuts at Dunkin' Donuts, bring them into the assessor's office, sweet talk the ladies who worked at the assessor's office to help me out, looking at the tax cards, making photocopies of the tax cards, all this stuff. I had to go to the Council of Governments to get aerial photographs. Now you do it all online. And I know to a lot of people out there listening that just sounds crazy that that's surprising, but it's a lot different now.
It is a lot different.
Yeah.
So, looking back over the years, what's the best deal you ever did?
I'm going to answer that in two questions. The ones that were most meaningful to me, perhaps. One was very early in my career, and one was relatively late in my career. The one that was very early in my career was marketing what was the Blue Cross building on Free Street and filling it up with a company, ABB Environmental Engineering Company. And it was a 92,000 square foot lease, and it was a big deal back then. It'd be a big deal now. But I was just getting going in the business, and all of a sudden, I just hit a home run. And a lot of people would talk to me after, and it opened some doors, and it meant a lot to me. Plus, I got a big commission check out of it.
That's where Sears used to be located.
Yeah, it was a Sears department store. In fact, the escalator was still there, and they took that out, and it became an ABB Environmental Engineering. And years later, we ultimately sold it to Maine Health. That's where Maine Health's headquarters is now.
Today.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So you said two parts. That was
the other one was working with Finn Sprague, relocating his shipyard business from what is now Portland Foreside, where Sun Life is going in, moving him out of there and acquiring the land down on West Commercial Street, where he is now, which was a complicated transaction. Too many details to go into, but there was tax deferred exchange aspects. There was dealing with two utility companies, the gas company who we were leasing land from, the railroad company who we were buying land from. Both companies, just by their nature, monolithic, difficult companies to get to think outside the box. Right. And it changed the Portland waterfront, opened up that west end of the waterfront for a lot of commercial uses that Finney's got going there now, and also opened up his land on 4th Street for some really exciting development. It was really the first thing that happened on the eastern waterfront. Right. Over there. It may be one of the last things that gets built, but it was the first thing that opened the door up over there for development.
So tell us about the worst deal you've ever done.
Boy, that's a longer list. The one that probably took the most out of me is I was hired to lease. I took over a building, a large office building here in town. I'm not going to name it. That was 100% vacant when I got involved in it. I sold it for the FDIC to a private individual who bought it. And I then got hired by him to lease it up. And I leased the whole building up, 125,000 square feet, from 0 to 125 full. And then got hired to sell it for him. And you know, we like doing a good job. You like keeping your client happy, and people think of our business as tough and that we're tough guys, and I don't know, maybe we are, maybe we aren't, but I really get upset when I don't think I'm doing a good job. And I thought I was doing a great job for this guy. And he would complain, and he'd call me late at night with these what seemed like bizarre accusations and questions and concerns, and I would try to meet them. Making a long story short, or shorter, come to find out he went insane during this process. And he was making me crazy because I was dealing with a man who was going crazy.
But you didn't know he was
I didn't know he
insane.
was going crazy at the time. And sounds like a crazy story, but that's one that was hard.
Did he get better, or?
I don't know. We sold the building, and I said goodbye, and I hope he's well. I know I recovered.
Yes, you're doing well.
Yeah,
you're doing well.
Yeah. It took me a while, but
let me ask this: what's the most embarrassing situation that's ever happened to you as a commercial broker?
I was showing a building once, and we found a dead body in it when we were showing it.
Was that over where Shipyard is?
That was what is now the Shipyard Brewery.
It was Crosby Laughlin.
Yeah, it was Crosby
Steel
Laughlin
plant.
Steel Plant. Yeah, and we discovered a dead body. That was tough.
Did that put a chill on the showing, or?
It did. I thought the deal was dead for a while,
Mm-hmm.
but it came back to life.
Mm-hmm.
Another one involved you. 630 Forest Avenue, which I was selling with you years ago. to a guy, and the guy I was selling it to was really nervous Nelly. He worried about everything, and you should worry when you're buying property. It's a lot of money, and a lot of things can go wrong, but boy, he took it to a new level. Every little thing was a
that's the one I
nightmare.
owned.
You owned it. And he kind of wore me out, but we got to the finish line, and it was the closing. I remember it was a Tuesday. It was raining, and that was the day we were going to close. And I got a call like an hour before the closing, and someone had driven a car through the front of the building, right up, the whole hood was inside the car, right up to the windshield, knocked the front of the building out. And I said, oh my God, now what's going to happen? And I called the guy up and he said, well, is the seller insured? And I said, yeah. He said, well, I don't see any problem. I couldn't believe it. This guy was worried about everything in the world, but there's a car with up to the hood in the building. He doesn't care. So, I don't know.
And that 630 Forest Avenue is a building that now says hopeful on it in neon.
Yeah. That's prophetic. Yeah.
Hey, Tony, in 2020 was the fourth recession you and I have gone through.
Yeah.
How do you make money in a recession when all hell breaks loose and the economy tanks?
Yeah. You hope it either tanks or gets better, in that I think you and probably most of our viewers are familiar with the business cycle. I'm not sure how to do it in reverse, looking into a camera, but things go up, business goes up, and then it goes down. The economic cycle goes up, the economic cycle goes down. In our business, we make money when the market's going up, and we make money when the market's going down, because there's transactions. But at the high points and the low points are when the market activity kind of slows down, stops. And those are tough times. Those are just tough times that you just have to keep working through it, and you get through it.
Usually a period of indecision.
It's a period of indecision, and we're facing it right now relative to office space, in that no one knows what to do long-term about offices. Employers don't know what to do. Building owners don't know what to do. And I think anybody that tells you they do know what's going to happen to office is delusional or lying, or maybe smarter than any of us, which could be. It's hard for companies to make decisions like that right now. So as a result, you see people not making decisions unless they absolutely have to. And what that's translating to for us right now is a tenant may have a 5-year or an option to renew for 5 years for a significant amount of office space. They don't really want to do that because they don't know what their business is going to look like in 5 years. I mean, there's always the business risk out there, but people don't know what office space is going to look like in 5 years. So they're doing 1-year renewals, 2-year renewals, that type of thing.
And landlords are willing to do it because they don't want to take the risk of having the space vacant.
Right.
What's the worst recession you went through since we've gone through 4?
Yeah, well, the one when I got in the business, I still think was probably the toughest one. I was not as impacted by it because I had nothing to begin with. I started with almost no money, and it wasn't a dramatic change for me. But I just recall back during those days, we have in our office, this, a tool we call Income Due, which is essentially it's a personalized accounts receivable list of the deals you have going. And I remember times back in that recession having nothing on that list, having absolutely nothing. That was a tough time.
It causes anxiety, doesn't it?
It does cause anxiety. And then that time, the federal government stepped in, FDIC stepped in, seized the banks, seized the properties, foreclosed on people, which was very difficult for a lot of people. For us, selfishly speaking, it was not a bad time because the federal government hired us through recall management, which was an entity they formed, to dispose of all those properties. So we got really busy and we made some money.
Yeah, and they were
during those times.
in the mode of getting rid of the property.
They wanted them out the door. They wanted them out the door. I remember at that point, I sold the Gateway parking garage. I sold it for $6.75 million to a group of investors back when things were hot. By the time that recession was done, I sold it for the federal government for $675,000 just a few years later. And
10% of what it was.
Shortly before the closing, as we were heading to figuratively speaking, heading towards the closing, a couple weeks before the closing, the federal government tried to modify the contract by adding another property they had to the property description. Didn't change the price, just said, oh, by the way, you got to take this one too. And the buyer at the time said, no, we're not taking that one. They couldn't give it away. They could not give the property away. Now that property subsequently, the one they wouldn't take, was converted as housing, and it's.
Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, it was the Holt Hall, the corner.
Oh, geez, up on Congress
Bram
Street.
Hall. Yeah, yeah.
Corner of Congress and
Bram Hall, isn't it?
yes.
Yeah, yeah. At the time, we were
Beautiful
selling the
apartments.
parking garage to Maine Medical Center. This was before Maine Health. And Don McDonald, who was the president or CEO of Maine Medical Center at the time, said, you know, I'm not taking that on right now. And I don't blame you. At the time, that was probably a good decision. In retrospect, I should have said, I'll take it.
Yeah. Lesson learned, I mean, prices can go down.
They do. They can, and they do, and they will. But they come back, too.
Yeah, if you have a long-term horizon.
You got to have a long-term horizon. It's a cyclical business. When things are hot, save some of your money. When things are bad, it'll get better. It always does.
Yep.
And those downturns represent great buying opportunities. Some of the best, or the greatest fortunes in our business have been formed during those downturns.
Well, as you know, you make your money when you buy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you've been in the business for 3+ decades. How do brokers like yourself and Dan Greenstein and others stay at the top of their game for such a long period of time and so consistently? I mean, don't you ever burn out?
Well, include yourself on that list too. So I could ask you the question, but we can just talk about it. I think it requires a certain type of person that is driven. I don't burn out. I get tired sometimes. I take a break. I travel.
You take a nap under your desk, don't you?
I just recline in the car. No, but you got to have balance in your life. There's that old saying. It's kind of cliche, but work hard, play harder. Mm-hmm. In that, you got to get away. You got to go out and do whatever it is you do: ski, sail, dive, hike, do something just to clear the channels. I think you got to like it too. I like working hard, and I think you do too. And the names you named, these are all people that are naturally hard workers. And as I mentioned earlier in the interview, I think one of the basic requirements if you're going to be successful in this business, perhaps in any business, is you got to work hard. No one hands you any of this stuff. You look at all the people you named and other top players, and I see it now in emails. When I'm up at 5:30 in the morning and I send an email to someone, or maybe a group of people, I can tell you who's going to respond quickly. It's those same people who are up and at it and they've got 2 newspapers read before they've had their second cup of coffee, and they're up and they're going. We touched on it earlier, just being tenacious, just keep trying. You get knocked down, you get back up, and you keep going. And I swear, some people buy property from me or lease property from me just so I'll stop calling them.
It's an effective sales
You
tool.
just keep going,
patent that.
keep trying,
Most people don't realize brokers at the Boulos Company are independent contractors, because we are a company.
Yeah.
And that there's internal competition. But also, there's a lot of cooperation in the office, which
Right.
I think really bodes well for our clients. But any war stories?
You really want to get into this here? Well, yeah, it's changed. Back in the day when we were first working together, we all used to compete mightily, and the biggest competition I had was sitting in the desk next to me. And I think we operated our business differently back then. I don't know why. I don't know if it's chicken or egg in that now we see they just get called the millennials. That's an unfair grouping, but I'm going to work with it. How they all want to cooperate and team and work together. Well, we do that now too. And I don't know if it's just a natural progression in the world. I don't know if it's because of the internet. I don't know if it's 5G. I don't know what it is. But we all work together.
It's really, somebody has said the company atmosphere is a much kinder, gentler atmosphere.
It really is, and it's much more productive. I remember we never used to team. We were all lone wolves back then. And Dan Greenstein and I were the first 2 guys to team in the company. And Joe Boulos came very close to trying to forbid us from doing that. And then he realized that we're independent contractors and we can do whatever we want. But it was a very new thing at the time.
And for him, he felt that it would lessen your drive.
Yeah, we'd lean on each other. We'd use each other as a crutch. And I can see why he thought of that. And I think that can happen when some people try to team. But if you get the right 2 or 3 or 4 people together who are synergistic and bring different skills to the table, it can be really very, very productive. And also it just helps to have someone to talk to, right, to run ideas by and not feel at risk of losing a deal. Because our business is still, even with the internet, is largely based on information and our ability to connect the dots between
That's
needs
right.
and wants and opportunities. And it helps to cooperate and have someone to throw ideas with.
There's a mutual friend of ours who's now deceased, but Al Glickman.
Yeah.
Al Glickman was a huge shopping center developer in California.
Started out as a broker.
Started out as a broker,
Yeah.
born in Portland, lived in California, got his law degree, became a
Yeah.
broker, developed like 100 Kmart shopping
Yeah,
centers.
largest Kmart developer ever.
Ultimately moved back to Portland and then Cape Elizabeth and passed away a number of years ago, unfortunately. But I remember you always quoted what he told you. What is that?
Yeah. He was Joe Bolus's mentor, I believe, and was kind of a mentor to a lot of us in the company. And he took me out to lunch one day, and I forget how we got talking about this, but he said that the best brokers, the very best brokers, are supremely self-confident and completely insecure, which describes all of us that are good at this to a T. Supremely self-confident in that we will go into any setting well prepared, but aren't afraid to pick up the phone and call anybody or go in to meet with anybody. We've just got self-confidence.
Right.
We're very self-confident and go into meetings prepared, and we're good with that. But at the same time, we're incredibly insecure in that we can have done 3 big deals in a row, made a bunch of money, got your picture on the front page of the paper, et cetera, but then it's like, I got nothing going on. Why don't everything going on?
You're only as good as your last deal.
Yeah, you're only as good as your last deal. Why don't everything going on? Maybe I'm no good. Yeah, I'm probably not any good. I guess I'm not very good at all. Why am I no good? And you just...
Actually, I've heard you say that.
and that's what gets you going out there is, I got to go, man. I got to get something going on. I got to get a deal going.
Unlike the voices in your head that
That's
say
right.
that.
That's right.
You're a big producer, and you could have gone off at any point in the last 34 years, started your own company, or gone with another firm. Why'd you stay at Boulos?
Boy, this company is just the best. And I don't want this to sound like an infomercial or something, but we take very good care of our people. We're not afraid to spend money on our marketing campaigns. We support our brokers. We devote a lot of resources to what we do. And it's just a very different operation than anybody else in town. And there's plenty of good companies in town. I've been told, I've heard us called the IBM of commercial real estate in Portland, that we operate at a very high level, a very high overhead level, but a very high production level. And we just want to give our salespeople the tools to go do their thing and let the back of the house take care of all the things that they don't need to do.
Advertising,
so it's
putting up
advertising,
signs.
all sorts of support. Someone's got to do that if you're going to operate at the level our guys do.
Was there ever a time in your career when you thought about quitting, giving up, just saying the hell with it, jumping on a sailboat and
This
sailing away?
morning, last Tuesday, the week before, the real answer is no. The real answer is all the time. Our business, and you know it, man, you take some real body blows. You can work on something for months, weeks, months, years, and have it just blow up due to no fault of your own. Something changes, corporate decisions change, something happens, and all of a sudden, all that work is gone and irretrievably lost. Those are hard to recover from. And you sometimes find yourself thinking, I wish my wife was here because she laughs at me when I say this. Still to this day, sometimes I'll just say, Denise, I just don't know if I can do this anymore. I just can't do this anymore. And she says, you say that like once or twice a year.
Credibility with her.
Yeah, I had no credibility whatsoever. She says, go back to work.
You know, those big deals that fall apart, I always find that a Friday before a long vacation, or before a long weekend, a deal either comes together, but more often times it just falls apart.
Oh.
And then you've got not 2 days to think about it, but 3 days to think about it.
Yeah, for a holiday weekend, yeah.
And it just kills the weekend.
Oh, it's awful. It's awful. But the answer to your question, no, I've never seriously thought about quitting the business since I've got into it. I've thought about doing additional things, because one of the really fascinating things about our business, which I love it, is you see so many different businesses and people doing different things. And you get exposed to all these different companies, think, well, that's really cool. Hey, I got an idea. You could do this like that, and I could do that with them. And so you have a lot of exposure to a lot of interesting ideas. And if you're creative, which loops back to what do I think are some of the traits that make people at the top of their game in our business, it's curiosity. You've just got to be curious in the business. You see things and you want to learn more. So you can get distracted and think about getting into other lines of business sometimes. I mean, I have the attention span of a gnat.
One of the ideas that you came up with, I don't know if you will remember this, but it was during the recession of 87, 88, and we were trying to figure out how do we adapt. Joe and I were talking, and you suggested starting an auction company.
Yeah.
And as a result of that idea, we started auction properties.
Right.
And to handle a lot of the FDIC properties.
Right.
And ultimately, we hired Doug Cox for a year, a good
Right.
friend of mine, and then Tom Sadley came along
Right.
and took it over, ultimately bought the company from us,
Right.
turned into Transon auction properties, and
Yeah.
has done a remarkable job with it.
Yeah.
But that really stemmed from your idea.
Well, that was a function, it was survival, in that when all those properties were being foreclosed on and auctioned off, the old way of doing auctions, which was, on the courthouse steps, so to speak, it was just a purely legal function to discharge liens and debt. There was no marketing, no sex appeal to it whatsoever. We, as a business, brokerage business, were just cut out of the deals. There was no way to do it. Yet we knew how to sell properties. We knew how to market them. We knew how to get top dollar for them. We knew who to call, who would be interested in that auction. And that was really the genesis of the idea, is why don't we get in the auction business, and why don't we give brokers a commission if they bring someone to an auction? Because you get all these brokers who are the best sales guys in the world. They're going to do a much better job marketing that property, getting a top dollar for it, than some, all due respect, but dry foreclosure bankruptcy attorney who's just running a classified ad and seeing who shows up that day. And now that's just the way it's done.
Yeah, and that model, as you said, is still done today. With a lot of auction companies.
Right.
I suspect some of the folks who are watching us on this video are people who are either brokers who just got in the business, or brokers who are thinking, or individuals thinking about becoming brokers and getting into the business. What advice would you give them before they take the leap?
Have a couple bucks saved up. Depending on your position in life, having a supportive, significant other is very important, because there's going to be a period of time, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, where you're not going to bring a lot of money home necessarily. And you're already fragile enough. There's nothing worse than coming through the door and having your significant other say, gee, did you sell anything today?
Oh,
no, I didn't.
makes you not want to go home.
Yeah.
Tony, that's so true.
Yeah.
There was a broker in our office years ago who went through that experience.
Right.
And finally, he just couldn't take it anymore. He left the business.
And he would have been a great broker.
Yep. And if he had given himself some time, but he didn't have the support at home.
Yeah.
And so he had a choice: either get divorced,
Yep.
or get a job with a salary.
Right.
And that's what he did.
So I'm making it sound a little bit dramatic, but I guess the point is, gird yourself for some tough time getting going, and align yourself with good people. Join a significant company. Join us. Go someplace where you're going to get some mentoring, some support. Hopefully you can be on a team of some sort, because you can't be expected to just go do it. You need to watch it, you need to see it happen, you need to participate. So I think being involved with a larger company is a good way to go, and a successful company, because you're just going to get exposed to the right way to do it. And plan on working hard. It ain't rocket science, but boy, it's hard work.
Yeah, and people don't realize from the outside how much work goes into it. And
Right.
you go to a closing and people think all you do is collect checks. They
Yeah.
don't see all the deals that fell apart,
Right.
or all the time that went into that particular deal.
Right.
Hey, Tony, if you had to do it over again, what would you have done differently in your career, or maybe even your life?
Yeah.
And I think we all feel that, a lot of people say nothing,
Yeah.
but I suspect that we all feel we would do something different.
I could easily say I wouldn't change a thing. I'm very, very, very happy with my life. Now, if I want to try a couple different flavors of it, what might I have done differently? I think sometimes acquiring properties earlier in my career, I've bought and sold properties for my own account, but it's very difficult to do. You don't want to be competing with your clients, and we do not compete with our clients. But the ability to team up with clients and acquire properties is something that's kind of interesting. If I really went off the reservation and went in a different direction altogether, mergers and acquisitions at the big corporate levels is kind of interesting. I mean, I've always felt that you and I sell. We could sell pencils and not make a lot of money. We could sell buildings and do pretty well. We could sell companies and do even better, perhaps, because selling to a certain degree is selling.
Tony, to be a good broker, I think you need to be resilient. You have to be able to bounce back after you lose that big deal you've been working on for years. How do you manage major setbacks in your real estate dealings? I mean, it's Friday afternoon, long weekend, deal fell apart. What do you do?
Yeah, I go to the beach in the summer, and that sounds like a joke, but it's absolutely true. I have a beach chair in my trunk.
Do you go with your wingtips, or?
I've got a bag to change my clothes too, because there's some days, all kidding aside, there's some days that I swear every time I pick up the phone it costs me $5,000. It's just bad karma or whatever. It's just not going well that day, and I think you got to listen to the universe sometimes and take the day off. Just go. When a big deal falls apart, it never gets easy. I've been doing it for over 30 years now. It never gets easy, but it gets easier in that I've been doing this long enough now to know that it'll be okay. Something else will happen. Another deal will happen. And what I think about also is you have to remember, when you're having a great day, when things are really going well, you are the master of the universe.
Don't get too comfortable.
Well, but bask in it a little bit. Just, bottle that up and save a little bit of it. And remember that, so that on those days when you feel awful, you can remember, geez, I really felt good that day, and it's all going to be okay. It all works out over time. And it gets easier as you've been doing it longer and your mortgages are paid off and you don't have to worry about every single week's paycheck quite as much.
So Tony, we're filming this in March 2021, and it looks like COVID is winding down.
Yeah.
Shots are being given. 2020 was a year of COVID,
Right.
the year before. How did that affect your business, or did it?
It did not have a dramatic impact on our revenue. I think we are just now really in our end of the business. And this takes nothing away from all the pain and suffering that the business community has suffered through with the pandemic, and people and individuals who've lost family members. But if you just put blinders on and look at our little business, I don't think we felt a whole lot of it yet. We're starting to feel it now. As I mentioned earlier, the office market is in a bit of an uproar. I shouldn't say uproar. It's just stagnant.
Yeah.
Is no one knows what to do. So as a result, no one's doing anything. That logjam is going to break. And I personally think the second half of this year, we're going to be flat out busy. And I'm not saying take the summer off, but I think as people are getting the vaccine and
Confidence returns.
People have a short memory. No one wants to be locked up the way we are anymore. People are just itching to get out and start doing business again. And I think that there has been and will continue to be a fundamental shift in that some businesses have gone out of business or will go out of business that for whatever reason, their fault, not their fault, did not survive this pandemic. But again, it opens up opportunity. Wherever there's change, there's opportunity. Sure. If a restaurant closes, God bless them, I feel bad for them. But guess what? That leaves a fully equipped restaurant for a new entrepreneur to come in with a new concept. If there's a lot of office space around and no one knows what to do with it, a new startup company can come in and lease space at a low price for a year or two, which they never would have been able to do before. So that gives them an opportunity for short money to get up and going and operating. So there's going to be a shift, and I'm repeating myself, but whenever there's change, there's opportunity. And I think the back half of this year is going to be great. I think 22 is going to be even better.
So you're going to be sticking around in the business for a while?
I am. I'm kind of sitting through the COVID intermission, and I definitely want to be around for the second half of the show. So I'm here.
Well, we look forward to that.
Yeah, be fun.
Hey, Tony, thank you for being our guest today on the Boulos Beat, a Boulos Company podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. And if you'd like to learn more about the Boulos Company, please be sure to visit us at www.boulos.com. You can find us at the Boulos Company on Facebook and LinkedIn, and at the Boulos Co. on Instagram and Twitter. And lastly, if you want to know the secret to owning real estate, it's pretty simple. Just be sure to outlive your debt. Thanks for tuning in.